I was smiling so hard my cheeks ached. My eyes brimmed with tears as he pulled out the ring, my dream ring, and dropped to one knee. I could barely speak. "Yes," I gasped. But just as he slipped the ring onto my finger, my mom leaned in, her voice cold and sharp against the warmth of the moment. "He proposed to me first." What the hell was she talking about? And why was my fiancé avoiding my eyes? I used to think I had the kind of love people envied, the kind where you finish each other's sentences, where one glance across a crowded room feels like home. Ethan made me laugh harder than anyone ever had. He remembered my coffee order to the swirl and always left sticky notes on the mirror when he left early. On Sundays, we'd sleep in late, tangled in sheets in warm silence, talking about where. We'd move once we saved enough. Maybe Colorado, maybe Oregon. Tiny house with a garden. A rescue dog named Fern. He called me Sunbeam. Said I made the world brighter. And I believed him. We'd been together almost 3 years. He wasn't flashy or over the top, just kind, clever, dependable. The kind of man who knew how to fix a leaky pipe and remembered my favorite line from my favorite book. People used to tell us we looked good together, and I used to think we are good together. But love, I've learned, is only as strong as the shadows it can survive. And some shadows live closer than you think. My mother, Renee, was always the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned the air. Perfect posture, jewelry that sparkled even in shade. She had me at 20, and by the time I was old enough to call her out on things, she was already playing the young mom card so hard it became her personality, while other moms wore yoga pants and messy buns. Renee wore heels to brunch and eyeliner to the grocery store. She loved to remind me that she still got carded, that men still stared, that she and I looked more like sisters than mother and daughter. I used to laugh it off, thought it was harmless, just her way of clinging to youth. But the older I got, the more I realized Renee didn't just fear aging, she saw my adulthood as a threat. Like my becoming a woman somehow chipped away at her relevance. She'd say things like, "You're lucky you inherited my legs," or "Be careful with carbs at your age, sweetie. They stick." Always smiling when she said it. Always with that tone, that syrupy sweetness you couldn't quite call out without sounding sensitive. She was never openly cruel. That was the genius of it. Was always just under the surface. Just enough to leave a scratch, but never a scar. When Ethan met her, I remember thinking, they'll get along too well. And they did. He told me afterwards she was incredible for her age. I flinched when he said it, but told myself he meant it innocently. She laughed too hard at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke. One night while she helped clear the dishes after dinner, I watched her lean against the counter, ankle crossed over ankle. Wine glass tilted just so, like she was posing. But it was subtle. Always subtle. I never had proof of anything. Just instincts I kept swallowing. Ethan didn't see it. Or maybe he chose not to. "She's just being friendly," he'd say. "Your mom's a flirt, sure, but harmless." Harmless. That word clanged in my skull like a loose pipe. I told myself to trust him. I wanted to trust him. But trust doesn't erase the way my mother would wear red lipstick only on nights we had dinner with Ethan. Or how she'd reminisce about her wild 20s while locking eyes with him across the table. Once, at my cousin's wedding, she wore a dress I'd returned 2 weeks earlier because it was a little too tight. She wore it with confidence and a smirk. Ethan had said I would have looked amazing in it. That was before she showed up in it, acting surprised like it was some wild coincidence. I never said anything. What would I even say? Please stop being beautiful around my boyfriend. She'd laugh, turn it into a joke, make me look insecure. And I hated feeling insecure. That wasn't who I was. Or who I wanted to be. Still, there were moments I saw something behind Ethan's eyes. A flicker. Once, I caught him watching her. Not like he was interested, but like he didn't know where to look. Another time, I saw his phone light up with her name. She had sent him a meme. Totally innocent. Up. But it made my stomach turn. They weren't crossing lines, exactly. Just erasing the edges. But then sometimes Ethan would do something that reminded me why I loved him. A surprise lunch at work, rubbing my feet when I had cramps, looking at me like I was the only person in the room. And just like that, the doubt would fade until the next time. I started wearing a little more makeup when we visited her. It's putting more effort into my hair, not for Ethan, but for myself. Let's keep up. To reclaim something I didn't know I was losing. It was a weird place to live, half in love, half on edge. Renee, of course, never acknowledged any of it. Just kept playing the cool mom, the young mom, the mom who was one of the girls. Except she wasn't. She was a presence. A mirror I didn't ask to look into. On my 26th birthday, Ethan said he had something special planned. He was glowing with anticipation, acting all mysterious. You'll see, he grinned, cupping my face. Just wait. I thought maybe a weekend getaway. A ring. I dared not hope. When I told my mom, she raised a perfectly tweezed brow. Oh, a surprise, huh? Let me guess. Dinner. She wore a knowing smile, the kind that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That's when the dread started. Just a whisper of it. It's a chill in the middle of a warm day. I didn't know it yet. That my birthday wasn't going to be the beginning of a new chapter with Ethan. It was the beginning of the end. The first time it really hit me was during a Sunday. Dinner at my apartment. I'd made lemon garlic salmon, Ethan's favorite. My mom brought over a bottle of wine she insisted was perfect for seafood, then spent 10 minutes describing the vineyard. The year and some story about a romantic sommelier in Paris who tried to kiss her hand. Ethan laughed harder than I'd ever seen him laugh at anything I said. Not polite chuckles, genuine full-belly laughter. Like she was the funniest person in the room. She twirled her wine glass, smiling over the rim, eyes sparkling like she was 25 again. And for a second, she looked it. Ethan wiped his eyes and said, "Lex, you didn't tell me your mom was this hilarious." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "She surprises people," I said, clearing the plates. After she left that night, I sat next to Ethan on the couch, my leg touching his. He scrolled through his phone, still grinning. I wanted to ask him what exactly had been so funny, but the question caught in my throat, swallowed by shame. It felt ridiculous to be jealous of my own mother, but once you see something, you can't unsee it. The next time Ethan and I had dinner at her house, she opened the door in a fitted silk blouse and heels just to serve pasta in her own kitchen. Her hair was perfectly curled, makeup flawless. Even a soft perfume I didn't recognize but somehow noticed on Ethan's hoodie days later. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, that a woman is allowed to dress up in her own home, but then she placed her hand on Ethan's shoulder for just a second too long as she offered Kim Parmesan. Her laugh spilled into the room like smoke, thick and sweet, and I watched him watch the way he leaned toward her story about dancing barefoot on a rooftop in Madrid. He was looking at her the way he used to look at me when I told my weird childhood stories. I stared at my plate, appetite gone. Later, when I brought it up carefully, quietly, like I was diffusing a bomb, Ethan laughed. "Lex, come on. Just ... your mom. She's charming, that's all. Don't you think it's a little much?" I asked. She wore stilettos to a spaghetti night. She probably just wanted to look nice. Don't take it personally. But I was taking it personally, not because of the heels. Not even because of Ethan's reaction. But because I was starting to feel invisible in my own relationship. Like I was slowly being edged out of the spotlight in a story that was supposed to be mine. Still, I said nothing. Until a week later. We were cuddled up on the couch watching a movie, our favorite kind of night. I had my head on Ethan's chest, the room dim, warm. He paused the movie to grab popcorn, and just as he stood, my mom called. It was past 10. He looked at the screen. "Should I pick up?" I hesitated. "She never calls this late unless something's wrong." He answered. I listened to his tone, soft, amused. He laughed again. I heard her say something about midnight snacks and missing dinner company. I wasn't sure what stung, more that she called him, or that he stayed on the line for 9 minutes while I sat there in silence. When he finally hung up, he shrugged. She was bored, said she couldn't sleep. She's not dating anyone. I asked. Nope, said most men her age are boring. I forced a smile. Right? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the popcorn across the room. Instead, I laughed, pretended it didn't matter. But it did. The pattern continued. My mom started texting him more funny memes, articles, even selfies with captions like, "Do I look too old for this lipstick?" He'd show me sometimes like it was normal, like it was cute at brunch. She interrupted me mid-sentence to tell Ethan about the time she snuck into a Hollywood party in the 90s and danced with a guy who might have been Jude Law. She talked fast, smiled wide, kept brushing invisible lint from his shoulder. And Ethan looked delighted afterward. I told him she'd cut me off 3 times. I didn't notice, he said, sipping his coffee. She's just animated. Animated, right? I started looking at myself differently in the mirror, noticing the faint lines around my eyes, the way stress clung to my jaw. I started curling my hair more, buying new lipsticks, trying harder, but it didn't feel like me anymore. It felt like a competition I didn't agree to enter. One night, lying in bed, I asked him if he thought she was attractive. What? He laughed. That's your mom. That's not a no. Lex, don't do this. Don't make this a thing. But it was a thing. I didn't want to admit it, but something inside me was changing, cracking. And the worst part was, I couldn't tell if it was all in my head, or if I was just finally waking up. I'd spent the morning of my 26th birthday pretending not to expect anything. Ethan had been acting cagey for weeks, too many whispered phone calls and don't peek texts, but I didn't press. A part of me hoped he was planning something big, something unforgettable. Another part prayed my mom wouldn't find a way to hijack it. I wore a lavender dress he once said made me look like springtime. I curled my hair. When I walked out, Ethan's eyes lit up like he'd never seen me before. You look like magic. He said. He kissed my forehead, then slipped a blindfold over my eyes. No questions, just trust me. I laughed, nervous and excited. In the car, he played a playlist he made for me years ago, every song a memory. I counted turns, tried to guess where we were going, but eventually gave up and leaned into the moment when we stopped. He helped me out and guided me inside. Warm air, the smell of roasted garlic, laughter, and then surprise. Ice took off the blindfold and blinked hard. The room was glowing dim chandeliers above long tables with white linen and gold candles. Our families were there, my best friend Jess, even my uncle who hated crowds. Everything was soft, intentional. It looked like something out of a dream. I covered my mouth, stunned. Ethan, how did you? He smiled. Happy birthday, Sunbeam. Dinner was perfect. The food, the wine, the laughter all floated. For once, even Renee behaved. She was dressed elegantly, but not flashy, sitting across from Ethan, her smile just a little too wide, but quieter than usual. I tried not to notice the way her hand grazed his wrist when she passed the wine. I told myself to stop looking for things. At some point, someone brought out a cake. Candles flickered. People clapped. I looked around at the faces I loved and thought, maybe this is the turning point. Maybe the anxiety, the jealousy, maybe it was just in my head after all. Then Ethan stood. He tapped a spoon against his glass. The room quieted. I want to say something, he said, voice trembling just slightly. He looked around the room, then at me. Lexi, you've been my best friend, my biggest cheerleader, my light in the dark. I've been a better man every single day because of you. And I want to keep becoming better with you. The room collectively inhaled. Ethan stepped around the table, reached into his pocket, got down on one knee. I didn't breathe. Will you marry me? I covered my mouth again, eyes filling. My hands shook. He opened the box. The ring was beautiful, delicate, classic. Exactly what I would have chosen. Yes, I whispered. Yes. Applause exploded around us. People stood, glasses clinked. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. He slid the ring on my finger and stood, wrapping me in a hug. I held on tight, anchoring myself in him in this moment. Then, just as he pulled back and the noise started to swell again, my mother leaned in close behind me. Her voice was calm, almost amused. He proposed to me first. I didn't move. Her breath was warm against my ear. 6 months ago. Same ring? Isn't that funny? The room spun. I blinked, smiled at a waiter without seeing him, nodded as someone said, "Congratulations." I sat back down, legs like jelly, and Ethan held my hand under the table, his thumb brushing my knuckle. My skin felt cold. I turned slowly to my mother. She was sipping champagne, laughing with someone, eyes glittering like she hadn't just shattered me into 1,000 pieces. My vision tunneled. I tried to pull myself back into the room. But everything was distant. Now the music, the clinking. Glassware. Ethan's voice beside me. All I could hear was her whisper. He proposed to me first. What did that mean? Had he actually gotten down on one knee? Was it a joke? Did she say no? Why hadn't he told me? I turned to him. He looked so proud, so happy. I studied his face, trying to find a crack. Something that told me she was lying. That this was some sick, twisted prank dot, but his smile was steady. He looked at me with that same soft awe he always had, and that terrified me even more, because if she was telling the truth, it meant he could lie with his whole face. The party went on. Its toasts were. Maid Renee's eyes met mine across the table, and she smiled tight, victorious. I barely tasted the cake. I laughed at jokes on autopilot. My body stayed, but my mind was somewhere else entirely, circling that sentence like a vulture. After dinner, Ethan pulled me aside outside the restaurant, the streetlights casting a golden haze around us. "You okay?" he asked. "You've been quiet." I forced a smile. It's just overwhelmed. He brushed hair from my face. "You sure? You looked like you saw a ghost." "You don't even know." I wanted to scream. But instead, I nodded. I let him kiss me. I let him hold me. I let him believe I was still the same woman who said yes with stars in her eyes. But inside, something had fractured. It wasn't just the proposal. It was the silence. The fact that he hadn't told Myth it was true. That he'd let her be part of something that should have belonged to us and her, my own mother. I didn't know who I was angrier at, him for possibly hiding it, or her for making sure I found out this way, not in private. Not with kindness, but at my birthday dinner, at my engagement. Right as the cameras flashed and I was supposed to be glowing, she stole it. With a whisper, "Dot," and if she thought I'd forget it, she didn't know me at all. Lexi stopped replying to Ethan's good morning texts, not because she didn't read them. She read every word, studied every emoji, screenshotted every message. But she couldn't bring herself to reply. Not now. Not while the image of her mother leaning in, lips brushing Lexi's ear with those words he proposed to me, first kept echoing. Like a bad dream, she needed proof. Not because she didn't believe her mom. Oh, she believed her because her. Mom wanted her to believe her. That whisper wasn't a confession. It was a move, a threat. A game Lexi had been a piece on her mother's board for years. The perfect daughter, the prize student. The one who had it all while her mom lived vicariously through her victories. Then subtly sabotaged anything she couldn't control. So Lexi did what she always did when the ground under her feet began to shift. She started with the facts. The next morning, while Ethan was in the shower, Lexi picked up his phone. It was stupid easy. He didn't have a lock screen, said he had nothing to hide. It used to make her feel safe. Now it just made her nauseous. She opened their message thread first. Nothing unusual, just hearts, inside jokes, little voice. Notes from days that already felt fake. But something tugged at her. The proposal had happened at her birthday dinner 2 days ago. She scrolled back to that night. There were photos of them together, smiling, a boomerang of the champagne toast. And finally, the video of Ethan getting on one knee. Her hands trembled as she checked the timestamp, 9:48. Then she opened his photo gallery and froze at 7:03 p.m. too. Hours before the proposal, there was a photo of her mother in her bathroom mirror. Wearing that ring, Lexi's blood went cold. The photo wasn't even subtle. Her mom's lips were pursed, that smug little smirk she always wore when she was winning. She even held her hand out like she was posing for a bridal catalog. Lexi's jaw clenched. Why would Ethan have that photo? Why would her mom send it to him? The puzzle pieces didn't just fall into place, they slammed down like a hammer. She needed more. She remembered her mom's iPad, the one she always kept in the living room, charging in the drawer next to the remote. Her mom used it for FaceTime and Pinterest and, apparently, private games of psychological warfare. That afternoon, while her mom was in the garden pruning her roses like a queen tending to her loyal subjects, Lexi slipped into the house. The iPad was right where she thought it would be. She powered it on, heart thudding. No passcode. The messages were still logged in. She typed Ethan's name into the search bar. Her breath caught. There it was. A thread that went back months. It started innocent Ethan thanking her mom for helping with a surprise, asking about Lexi's favorite cake flavors, wanting her ring size. But then, you ever think about how different things could have been if we'd met first? Lexi's mouth went dry, and her mom's reply. All the time. Her hand shook as she scrolled through dozens of flirty texts, emojis, secret jokes. Even a selfie her mom had taken in Lexi's favorite dress. But the worst part, the part that made her stomach drop, was a voice memo. She tapped it before she could stop herself. Do it, her mom said softly. Tonight she'll say yes. You'll win. We'll win. Lexi's eyes burned. Her chest felt like it might cave in. She wasn't just betrayed. She was used. The proposal wasn't about love. It was about power. Her mom had orchestrated the whole thing like a show-baiting Ethan, manipulating Lexi, twisting romance into something cruel and strategic. And Ethan didn't even resist. He let himself be led like a dog on a leash. Lexi sat in the dark living room, the blue glow of the iPad screen washing over her like a spotlight in a courtroom. Her mother had always needed to win. Whether it was baking competitions, PTA fundraisers, or now her daughter's engagement and Lexi. She'd played the quiet one, the obedient one. But something cracked inside. She wasn't going to cry. She was going to plan. For the first time in her life, Lexi wasn't going to beg for love or compete for approval. She was going to watch them, the both of them, squirm under the weight of their own lies. She closed the iPad, slid it back into the drawer, and stood up. Her face was calm, but inside, a fire had started. The restaurant buzzed softly with candlelight and clinking glasses. A place chosen carefully for its ambiance. Warm, intimate, and open enough for every table to bear witness. Lexi wore red. Not the soft, romantic kind, but the shade that demanded attention, the kind that dared you to look away. Her lips matched it, her posture flawless. Her smile, razor-sharp. Ethan arrived right on cue, beaming, soaking in the attention as he took her hand and kissed it like some cheap prince in a Disney knockoff. Renee followed behind him, a bit overdressed for a daughter's engagement dinner. Lexi had expected nothing less. The woman had always been theatrical. "Babe, this place is gorgeous," Ethan said, pulling out her chair. "You didn't have to go all out." Lexi laughed lightly, placing her hand gently on his. "Of course I did. You deserve the best, don't you?" Her tone dripped with something he didn't quite catch, but Renee did. Lexi saw the slight twitch in her mother's expression before she smoothed. It back into a glossy grin. The table was set for 12, a mix of friends, colleagues, and extended family who all knew Lexi as the poised, ambitious daughter who always did things the right way. Ethan was playing the role of doting fiancé perfectly, arms wrapped around her chair, whispering sweet nothings in her ear like nothing had ever happened. Like his biggest secret wasn't about to flash on a wall behind him an hour after. The main course had been cleared and dessert had just touched the table. The lights dimmed exactly as Lexi had planned. I have a little surprise, she said, tapping her glass with her spoon. Everyone turned. I know engagements are about looking forward, she said, her voice confident but soft. But I wanted to look back at the moments that brought us here. Ethan gave her a proud squeeze. Renee reached for her wine. The projector hummed to life. A slideshow began. Pictures of Lexi and Ethan filled the screen. Beach trips, ski trips, birthday dinners, photos Lexi had chosen for their perfect timing and symmetry. Everyone a memory, everyone a lie. Laughter echoed across the table as a goofy shot of Ethan in a flamingo floaty appeared. Lexi watched him blush and lean into her shoulder. That was Miami. He whispered. She nodded, her jaw tight. Yeah, Miami. Then the screen blinked. The next image wasn't a photo, it was a screenshot. A message thread. At first it was just names. Ethan, Renee. There was a pause, some confused murmurs, and then the messages. Renee, you can't propose to her, not until we figure this out. Ethan, I had to. She was starting to suspect. Renee, you said it was real with me. You said you were choosing me. The air shifted instantly. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, "Wait." What? The messages kept rolling, one after another. Long, desperate, flirtatious, familiar, disgusting. A text from Ethan, timestamped just 3 weeks earlier. "I'll make it up to you, Renee. She's just ... convenient." Gasps. A fork dropped. Renee's face went pale. Her lipstick suddenly too red, too loud. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Ethan stood. "Lexi, what is this?" She didn't answer. The screen showed the final message. Proposing to her was never the plan. You were always first. Ethan turned to her, panicked now, voice cracking. "Lexi, please, this isn't what it looks like." She stood. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her silence was louder than any explosion. With precise grace, she took her hand, still gloved in the ring he'd proudly given her, and slid it off. The diamonds caught the last of the projector light, sparkling one final time before she placed it gently on the center of the table. "Next to his untouched creme brulee, I know," she said quietly, locking eyes with him. "I've known. For weeks." She turned to Renee. "And you? I hope it was worth it." Then to the table. "Thank you all for coming." And she walked, not fast, not dramatic, but like someone who had finally finished cleaning up someone else's mess. The room stayed frozen in her wake. Ethan frozen mid-step, Renee half standing, trying to reach for something she'd never get back as Lexi pushed through the doors and into the night. The air felt cold against her skin, and clean. Behind her, the weight of betrayal collapsed in whispers, gasps, and silence. She never looked back. The silence after the confrontation didn't feel like peace, not at first. It felt like the ringing in your ears after an explosion. Lexi left that restaurant with her heels in hand and her heart lodged somewhere between rage and sorrow. She didn't cry in the Uber. She didn't scream. She just stared out the window as the city blurred by. The buildings tall and unmoved. Like they hadn't witnessed her world collapse just hours before. By the next morning, the text messages started. First from Ethan, long, stumbling paragraphs of apologies and excuses. "It was before you and me. It meant nothing. It was a mistake." He even tried to call once, then twice, then 10 times. She blocked his number. Then came her mom. Renee's messages weren't apologies. They were explanations, twisted logic wrapped in guilt trips. "I didn't want to hurt you. Never understood how lonely I was. You try to see this from my side, Lexi didn't respond. Not once. Not when her mom showed up at her apartment the following week. Standing in the hallway with her mascara smudged and mouth trembling, Lexi opened the door, stared at her, and shut it without saying a word, and the world around. Renee began to change. The friends who used to fawn over her at brunch didn't return her calls. The women who always envied her charm now whispered behind her back. Even Ethan's family, the ones who once adored Renee, turned cold. His sister called Lexi weeks later just to say, "We had no idea. I'm so sorry." Renee had spent her life crafting an image, polished, desirable, untouchable. But now people saw through the gloss. They saw the envy, the need to compete. The woman who couldn't let her daughter shine without trying to outshine her. And Lexi, she left. She packed up her studio apartment, sold most of her things, and moved across the country. It wasn't a dramatic move. There was no cinematic goodbye. No final words to Ethan or Renee. She simply vanished from their radar. A new city, a tiny apartment above a bookstore. No one knew her name, and she liked it that way. For the first time, she wasn't Renee's daughter or Ethan's fiancée. She was just Lexi. She got a job waiting tables and started writing again, not for clients or campaigns, but for herself. Scribbled thoughts on coffee-stained notebooks. Essays about betrayal. Short stories where the mothers were kind and the daughters got to win. And when she finally started therapy, it felt like learning to breathe again. At first, she said little, then too much. Then just enough. It took weeks to say Renee's name, without flinching. Months before she stopped wondering what Ethan would say if he could see her now. But eventually, the weight began to lift, not all at once, but slowly. Like shedding wet clothes after a storm, she didn't forgive them. Not completely. But she forgave herself for trusting, for missing the signs, for needing their love. So desperately that she ignored her own reflection. One afternoon, sitting by a window with soft golden light pooling on the hardwood floor, Lexi wrote a letter to her younger self. She wasn't planning to. It just spilled out raw and steady, dear. Younger me. I'm sorry no one told you that you didn't have to fight to be seen. You thought love meant shrinking. You thought attention meant worth. You thought if you were quiet and patient and good enough, she'd stop treating you like a rival. You were never in competition, especially not with your own mother. You're allowed to walk away from people who treat you like a mirror instead of a daughter. You are not a reflection. You are the light. When she finished, she didn't cry. She smiled, softly. It wasn't happiness exactly, but something steadier, peace, maybe. Or power. Back home, Renee tried to patch her image, but the cracks showed. She kept dating younger men, though none stayed long. She threw parties. But fewer people came, sometimes late at night. She'd scroll through old photos of Lexi, the ones she used to post online with captions like "My mini-me." Now they felt like relics from a life she'd already lost. Because while Lexi moved on, Renee stayed the same, still chasing validation, still trying to win a race no one else was running. And that, Kay, in the end, was her true loss. Not just a daughter, but the chance to ever truly love her.